Welcome back to the C Block, or final section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, once again filling in for Elena Pinto, who has promised me she will be back next week. A reminder that if you want to make it easy to find this week's news show or last week's news show, the best thing to do is to download our free app, PCM TV, and once registered, you'll be able to get on the demand access to this program with just one click. Now, the first publishing of the full show at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Mondays will be on the homepage of ProCannabisMedia.com and the PCM TV app. Now, we turn to California, where just a week ago, Governor Gavin Newsom wanted to ban all cannabis-derived Delta-8 products, and that state has been so screwed up with this new adult use and now the hemp world that the legal rollout of the plant, after enjoying such a pretty good success with their medical program that was long lasting for a long time. But now that it's adult use and hemp, they have no idea, and they continue to have problems with their regulation board. Now, 2 weeks ago, Governor Gavin Newsom issued an executive order to ban all cannabis-derived hemp products, but immediately opposition grew to that plan and it shut it down, and that shut down his executive initiative. But as Cornbread Hemp's Jim Higden explains, Governor Newsom isn't the only governor implementing knee-jerk reactions to the unregulated Delta-8 products.
And what he's trying to do is eliminate safe consumer choice in the marketplace and force consumers into a dispensary system that's lousy with pesticides. So first of all, that it's not great. We at Cornbread make USDA certified organic CBD products, hemp products, including new THC gummies. We make 10 milligram THC gummies made from hemp in a patent pending process that uses exclusively organic inputs for the entire process. The only way a consumer in the cannabis space can know for sure that they're getting a product without pesticides is a product with the USDA organic seal. And the only cannabis products that contain the USDA organic seal are legal hemp products like we make at Cornbread. And Gavin Newsom is trying to restrict California consumer access to USDA organic cannabis products in exchange for sending them into a dispensary system that the LA Times has shown is rife with pesticides.
That's right. And Give Weed Week and Alex Halpern and the LA Times. Needless to say, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is still trying to fight to defeat the passing of Question 3 on that November ballot that, if passed, will add adult use sales to the already flourishing Florida medical market with over 800,000 patients. We certainly know how our Florida correspondent Jeff Aker feels about the passing of Question 3.
This is Jeff Aker, Master Gardener from Florida, with the Florida Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. We're going to talk about 3 again. Hey, the one thing about 3 that I don't think anybody's really mentioned or talked about much, so I wanted to bring it up today with you guys, is that right now in the medical program that we have in the state, there is 36,000 employees working right now. I actually worked at a Fluent one for a while, and there was a good 200 people there between the mother room, the flowering room, the veg room, the trim room, the packing room. I mean, there was a lot of nice people too. So when the Amendment 3 does pass, because we're all going to vote for it, correct? When the amendment does pass, I can see 50, 60,000 jobs that are going to be created for those people that can't maybe necessarily go to college and get a 4-year degree. More of a tradesperson job, but it's a good industry to be in. There's nice people in the industry. So let's vote for 3. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about was DeSantis talking about the smell and everybody smelling it. I'm a cigarette smoker. And there's not anywhere in Florida I can go into and smoke inside. I have smoking areas. I've been dealing with this for years. And it's going to be the same thing with cannabis. When it went in to be voted on in Schedule 3, you can only have one topic in Florida for the thing. So we can't throw we couldn't throw the home grows prohibiting smoking. But when they enact it, they can set the rules for not being in school zones, not being in business, smoking inside. They can set the rules when they put it into play. And DeSantis, if we vote 70%, which it's looking like, you are a servant of the people. Not, well, I don't think. We don't want you as governors for what you think. You're there to interpret our wants to the federal government. That's what you're there for, as government. So, Jeff Aker, vote 3, Master Gardener, for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The state of Idaho has long been one of the longest holdouts for cannabis reform, but now advocates have a plan to get the adult use question on the ballot in 2026. That movement is just beginning, but we will be keeping an eye on their progress. In the meantime, Ohio continues to welcome more adult sales. Here's Christina Brisson with the Ohio Cannabis Report, sponsored by Yellow Labs and their sublingual mists and creams.
In Loveland, Ohio, Emily and Mark seek to deepen their bond through intimacy. They turn to Yellow Labs Rose Oil Massage Cream with delivery technology, promising enhanced pleasure and connection. The cream ignites increased sensitivity and arousal as they apply it, kindling a shared passion. Excited by its effects, they find joy in shared closeness and moments of unity.
I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations, with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report from Cannabis Coast to Coast News. First, I wanted to just touch on a couple fun facts behind the $54 million in sales. That equates to 6,179 pounds of marijuana sold at an average of $8.95 per gram. And speaking of dispensaries and sales, I was recently at Bloom Medicinals and discovered the Bloom Sessions. The next one's coming up on October 19th. It's a Zoom meeting, and it's supposed to be a monthly educational series with a little Ohio Cannabis 101, some product Q&A, as well as some safe consumption rules. I'm looking forward to find out what information they provide us there. But going on to next is trouble in Hubbard, Ohio. It's one of 110 municipalities or townships that have a moratorium prohibiting adult use businesses within city limits. A local dispensary owner of ACA Dispensary is recently pleading with the council to overturn their decision. He has a dual use license already issued by the state and is unable to use it. Recently, a councilman actually spoke up in support in favor of the company. We wish you the best of luck, ACA. Let's talk about jobs in the state of Ohio in the cannabis industry. When I did a quick search on Google, I found more than 200 available on any job board. But then I was thinking, what do they pay? So I did a quick bit of research, and on ZipRecruiter, they claim they pay from a minimum of $38,000 a year up to $143,000 per year, with the average being at $81,000 per year. That's a pretty big difference. So let's move on to how do we get there? How do you get to that point? Well, it comes back, I would think, to education. In Ohio, we have two notable programs. We have the Cleveland School of Cannabis, and we have Kent State's Green Flowers program. The Green Flowers program has had 140 students attending and registered since January of this year. The Cleveland School of Cannabis has had a significantly increased registration since the legalization of recreational use. They've been around since 2017, and they were the first university accredited across the U.S. They offer programs in the executive side, dispensary, cultivation, and processing. That is your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report. I am Christina Brisson from Over the Top Renovations with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Have a great week.
The Ohio Cannabis Report is supported by Yellow Labs and BetterWaysToTHC.com. Search for Yellow Labs near me and find one of 40 dispensaries in Ohio carrying these amazing mists and creams. Now that the Fed has cut interest rates by 1/2 point, cannabis stocks joined the overall trading frenzy that was part of this past week's action on Wall Street. And that's where you will find Doug Miller, who is high on Wall Street. And he has the story of Bright Green, one of the first cannabis stocks to be listed on the NASDAQ, and now is just struggling to survive. Sound familiar? Here's Doug Miller.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast, Bright Green Corp., the first plant-touching marijuana business to trade on a major U.S. stock exchange, said its shares have been suspended from trading on the NASDAQ. The suspension comes after NASDAQ canceled the company's September 26 hearing to appeal its delisting. Bright Green has secured a $2.5 million line of credit to ensure it has the financial resources to support its operations. Bright Green initially was listed on the NASDAQ on May 17th, 2022, under the stock ticker BGXX, and it ran from $8 per share all the way up to $58 per share, giving it a market value of more than $9 billion. But then the stock dropped to less than $3 a share a month after it was listed, and now it's suspended. And in other news, the Fed lowered the interest rate by a 0.5 point, and it made the stock market start popping. So keep an eye on the cannabis stocks to start moving after that Fed news. And that is this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast, I'm Doug Miller.
This is Debbie Facey with the Canadian Cannabis Coast to Coast News. So what we have in Canada this week are two great stories. Aurora has signed or officially has been granted a patent when it comes to creating some autoflowers. This is going to be not only a benefit for many of their growing seasons, but it's going to be a benefit for us as consumers due to the fact that the bud will not only be fresher, but it will be a faster turnaround time due to the fact that autoflowers don't need as long as a period to grow, and the space will be able to be available at a shorter period of time. I apologize for that amazing fly that's flying. Next, what we have is an unfortunate story in Manitoba, which is a facilitator that was housing children by the children and youth, and they were giving them marijuana. This place is called the Spirit Rising House, and the owners had been alleged and were investigated and found out that they were providing their youth that was in their care with cannabis. This is something that not only is Manitoba government looking at, but all of Canada is now very much aware of. And we do too have to keep in mind of who is in care or taking care of children that unfortunately are in foster care or in other situations, and making sure that they are in safe situations. And that means not given drugs, especially ones that are not legal to them. This is Debbie Facey with the Canadian Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Peace.
And finally today, there were 3 major cannabis celebrations and trade shows over this past weekend, coast to coast. One in Santa Cruz, California. It was called the Hall of Flowers, and they had over 320 vendors on hand with over 10,000 attendees on a beautiful weekend in Northern California. In Michigan, NECANN had their first visit to that state in Grand Rapids, and here in Massachusetts, it was the 35th annual Freedom Rally, which was a critical event to go for the legalization of adult use of cannabis, but of course that was passed in 2016. But now it's just a celebration of good times and good cannabis. You'll be able to tell the difference between these two entities because one was in the sunshine and the other was in the rain and mud and glunk and just gunky, horrible weather, but still thousands of people showed up to celebrate the plant. Well, that'll do it for this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I promise Elena Pinto will be back next week. For the entire Cannabis Coast to Coast News team, I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, reminding you again that it is a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, it's a great question because cannabis is very exciting. It's almost like, mom and pop drugstores. You could start whatever you wanted. You could be pretty successful. And then there are the business people who see the revenue potential. And those are the ones that I think they are going to become the buyers going forward. And then smaller companies will be the sellers. And then there'll be another group of like, what the heck happened? and there'll probably be some craft survivors as well. But I think, the access to capital in business, this is becoming a mature business, just like craft beer or the car industry from, the 1910s to today. Yeah, I think Schedule 3 will have radical changes. I think we're going to see consolidation in the space independent of Schedule 3. Schedule 3 will influence the flavor of the consolidation, but it's going to happen no matter what.
Will that open up more capital?
It'll open up more capital, more access. One way or another, as the industry consolidates, they're going to have to get access to capital. The buyers will, and that's going to change the markets fundamentally.